Hello, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we start, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, please tell me that too. I still remember the exact sound my tires cut through the highway that night. That low, constant hum that only happens when you've been driving for so long, your brain stops registering movement. I was 22, broke, tired, emotionally wrecked in the way only college can leave you. I'd been studying in southern Georgia, just outside a town nobody ever remembers the name of unless they got stuck there. I originally grew up near eastern Iowa, and every few months I'd make the drive back home, 15, sometimes 16 hours, depending on traffic and weather. Normally, I split the trip into 2 days. But that time, I didn't want to stop. Not after what had just happened. 2 days before the drive, my girlfriend Ray had dumped me over FaceTime. 3 years together, same major, same friend group, same plans. And just like that, she said, "I don't think you're my future anymore." No yelling, no fighting, just quiet finality. So instead of crashing at a motel halfway, I packed my car, grabbed 2 energy drinks, and decided to drive straight through the night. I told myself it was about saving money. Truth was, I didn't want to lie in a dark motel room, replaying her voice. By midnight, the roads thinned out. By 1:30 a.m., the world felt empty. No cars, no billboards, no radio stations coming in clearly anymore. Just black sky and asphalt. I rolled the window down to keep myself awake. The air smelled like wet dirt and pine. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flickered behind thick clouds, but no thunder followed. At around 3:04 a.m., my gas light came on. I stared at it longer than I should have. "Not now, you idiot," I muttered, tapping the dashboard like that might help. I knew my car well enough. When the light came on, I had maybe 35, 40 miles if I drove easy. The GPS showed nothing nearby. Just a thin gray line cutting through green nothingness. Then I saw an exit sign. Exit 218. Wellmouth. I slowed down. "Please let there be something," I whispered. I took the exit. The ramp curved off the highway like it was leading into a different world. At first, it was just trees, tall, close together, blocking out whatever moonlight existed. The road narrowed, the paint faded, and my headlights felt weak, like they couldn't push past the darkness. I drove for maybe 2 miles, without seeing a single sign of life. No street lights, no mailboxes, no houses. I was about to turn around when I saw lights ahead. Dim yellow, flickering. Relief washed over me so hard my shoulders dropped. Thank heaven. The road bent slightly, and suddenly I was in town, if you could call it that. The speed limit dropped to 20 miles per hour. Old brick buildings lined both sides of the street, their windows dark or boarded up. Faded signs hung crooked. Hardware, bakery, barber, all looking like they hadn't been touched in decades. The town felt paused, not abandoned, just waiting. I slowed down, hands tightening on the steering wheel. Where the hell is the gas station? I muttered. I drove deeper. The buildings thinned out, replaced by houses. Old sagging homes with porches that leaned slightly forward like they were listening. No lights on inside, no cars in driveways. That's when my stomach started to knot. I checked the fuel gauge again. Too low to keep wandering. I decided to turn around. I pulled into the first driveway I saw. The gravel crunched loudly under my tires. As I turned the wheel, a porch light snapped on. I froze. The front door opened. An older man stepped out, tall, thin, wearing a sleeveless undershirt despite the cold. He didn't say anything. He just stared. Then he started walking toward my car. Slowly, I rolled my window down halfway and raised my hands, palms out. "Sorry, man," I said quickly, just turning around. Didn't mean to. He stopped walking, tilted his head like he was trying to understand my words. I backed out faster, heart pounding. As I turned around and drove away, I glanced in my side mirror. He was still standing there watching. That's when I noticed the others. 2 houses down, someone standing at the edge of a driveway. Across the street, another person, arms crossed. They hadn't been there before. Or maybe they had, and I just hadn't noticed. Every one of them stared at my car. No curiosity, no confusion, just hostility. I swallowed hard and kept driving. When I reached the main strip of town again, my chest tightened. People were standing outside the buildings now. Not a few. A lot. Men, women, different ages. At least 10 on each side of the street. All facing the road. All facing me. No one spoke. No one waved. They just watched as I crawled past at 20 miles per hour. My pulse thudded in my ears. Okay, don't panic, I whispered. Then someone stepped off the curb. Then another. They didn't rush. They approached slow, deliberate. One man raised his hand, not to wave, but like he was signaling me to stop. No chance, I said out loud. I pressed the gas. The engine wed, the speedometer climbed. Behind me, I saw movement, people stepping farther into the road. I didn't look back again. I sped through the town, tires squealing as I hit the curve back, toward the highway. I didn't slow down until I saw the freeway lights. I merged back on, heart hammering, hands shaking so bad I had to grip the wheel with my knees just to steady myself. I drove 10 more miles on fumes before I saw another exit. This one had lights, real ones. A 24-hour gas station glowing like salvation. I pulled in and just sat there for a minute breathing. The cashier looked up as I walked in. "You okay, man?" he asked. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, just a long drive." I didn't mention Wellmouth. Didn't want to. I filled the tank, got back on the road, and drove straight home. No stops, no detours. I've tried to find that town since. It doesn't show up on maps anymore. And I still don't stop in small towns at night. Some places don't want visitors. I still remember the exact smell of that house on the day I unlocked it for the first time. Fresh paint mixed with dust that had been sitting too long. That dry, hollow smell that tells you a place has been empty, but is trying to pretend it's ready for someone new. I was 29, freshly done with grad school, exhausted in a way only years of deadlines and self-doubt can exhaust you, and standing alone on the porch of a modest one-story home in a quiet stretch of Maple Hollow, a working-class suburb outside Columbus that most people only knew because it sat off the highway between nothing and nowhere. The house wasn't impressive. Beige siding, low roof, a narrow driveway that could barely fit my aging Corolla. But it was mine. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself, while my parents hugged me goodbye. Proud and worried in equal measure, pretending not to notice how tight my hands were shaking on the key. I had lived with them longer than I planned, saving money since high school, stacking scholarships, assistantships, anything that would keep me afloat. They help with the down payment because the economy is a joke, and pretending otherwise is just lying to yourself. The place was basically the size of a trailer, without the stigma. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a small kitchen with cupboards that went all the way up to the ceiling, and a living room that echoed until I bought a rug. It felt temporary, like a place you stayed while waiting for life to really begin. But it was all I could afford, and I told myself independence didn't have to look like a Pinterest board to count. The first few weeks were rough. Silence has weight when you're not used to it. At night, every creak made my stomach flip. I slept with the TV on low background noise, filling the gaps my thoughts wanted to crawl into. I worked long hours at a marketing firm downtown, trying to prove I deserved the position I fought so hard for, and came home drained, microwaving dinners and collapsing onto the couch in my workclothes. Slowly, though, the house softened. I hung thrift store art on the walls. I bought plants I kept forgetting to water. I started inviting coworkers over on Fridays. Cheap wine, bad takeout, laughter echoing off those once empty walls. For the first time, it started to feel like a life instead of a holding pattern. Around that time, I dipped my toes back into dating. Nothing serious, just the apps, casual conversations, coffee that didn't go anywhere. I told myself I wasn't in a rush. After years of school and stress, I liked the idea of choosing myself for once. Still, there were nights I came home wishing someone else's shoes were by the door, wishing the silence would ask less of me. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my reset days. No plans, just comfort food and video games. I had ordered a large pepperoni the night before, eaten exactly one slice, and put the box back in the fridge. When I opened it the next evening, half of it was gone. At first, I laughed out loud, shaking my head. Wow! I whispered to the empty kitchen. Get it together. I eat a lot. Stressed as that to me. I shrugged it off, grabbed another slice, and went back to my room. But then it kept happening. Milk disappearing faster than usual. Leftovers I swore I hadn't touched gone completely. I tried to rationalize it. Long days, brain fog. Maybe I was sleep snacking and didn't remember. It sounds ridiculous, but when you live alone, you learn to doubt yourself before you suspect the impossible. I even joked about it with a guy I'd been casually seeing from a dating app, telling him I must have a ghost with a serious appetite. He laughed, said, "Hey, at least the ghost isn't stealing your wine." At the time, it was funny. The joke stopped being funny when I came home one night and found the fridge door slightly open. I stood there longer than I want to admit, key still in my hand, listening. The house was quiet, too quiet. I closed the fridge, heart thumping, and did a slow walk through every room, checking corners like I'd seen in movies. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No mess. Just that nagging feeling crawling up my spine. That night, I slept with my bedroom door locked for the first time. I remembered the hidden cameras, almost by accident. Back in high school, a friend of mine had been paranoid about her stepdad, and her older brother gave us these tiny cameras, disguised as phone chargers. We thought we were being edgy, prepared for the worst. I'd packed them when I moved out without really knowing why. Maybe some part of me always expected things to go wrong. I plugged one into the kitchen outlet by the counter, another facing the fridge, and tried not to feel stupid while I did it. Just peace of mind, I muttered. That's all. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends. I didn't want to be the girl who overreacted. A few days later at work during lunch, one of my coworkers, Jenna, was venting about her mom's place getting broken into. They didn't even take much, she said, shaking her head. Just food, some cash. It's creepy, you know, like someone was just there. My stomach dropped. I told her about my missing food, my half-joking theory about a squatter. Jenna's expression shifted from amused to serious fast. That's not nothing, she said. You need to check. Do you have cameras? When I told her about the charger cams, she helped me download an app that synced the footage. I waited until that night, sitting on my bed with my iPad, fingers hovering like I was afraid the screen might bite me. The footage was boring until it wasn't. At around 2:14 a.m., the kitchen light flicked on. I leaned closer, breath shallow. The cupboard above the sink, the one I never used, creaked open from the inside. A pair of hands appeared, then a face. An older woman, thin, hair matted and gray, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. She dropped to the floor with a soft thud and went straight for the fridge like she owned it. She drank from my milk carton, ate cold leftovers with her bare hands, crumbs falling onto my counter. She didn't rush. She looked comfortable. After 10 minutes, she climbed back up, folded herself into that cupboard like it was a nest, and closed the door. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went numb. I called the police from my car, hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. I refused to go back inside. When they arrived, I watched from the driveway as they opened the cupboard and pulled her out. She screamed, cursed, clawed at them, yelling that she was my mother, that she lived there, that they had no right. Her voice was raw, desperate, terrifying. They took her away. I pressed charges. After that, my mom stayed with me for weeks. I installed more cameras, changed the locks, adopted a mutt named Buck despite my allergies. I stopped dating for a while. Trust didn't come easy after that, especially not with strangers. Sometimes late at night, I still listen to the house breathe, reminding myself I'm safe now. I never imagined my life would end up on the dim sidewalks of Brookview, Nevada, a small desert town off the interstate where truckers stopped for fuel, beer, and women who needed money more than safety. I'm Melissa Carter, 27 years old, originally from Princeton, Minnesota. I grew up in a house where my mother worked 2 jobs and my father worked 2 fists, one for drinking, one for hitting. I ran away at 17 and bounced around states, doing whatever I had to in order to survive. Eventually, I landed in Brookview, a place that looked normal from the highway, but rotted from the inside once you stepped off exit 12. People think sex workers don't feel fear. They think we choose this. But the truth is, fear is the only thing that keeps us alive. Fear of the wrong car, the wrong smile, the wrong night. And one night became the very definition of wrong. It was a cold autumn night when the wind carried sand across the roads like tiny knives. Most clients came in loud pickup trucks or shiny semis. But around 1:15 a.m., a black 1999 Lincoln Town car rolled slowly toward me, its headlights dim like dying eyes. I'd never seen that car before. The window slid down only halfway. Inside, a man's silhouette sat perfectly still. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Are you available?" he asked. Something about him made my stomach twist. His tone was polite, gentle, but lifeless, like he practiced it. People say your instincts are your first guardian angel. Mine screamed at me to walk away, but I needed the money. "Where to?" I asked. "Just a short drive," he said. "I prefer privacy." Privacy. That word is a loaded gun for women like me. Still, I opened the door and sat inside. The interior smelled like old leather and cold air. No personal items, not even a water bottle. Everything was too clean. He pulled away from the curb, driving silently through the deserted town. No music, no small talk. After a minute, I finally asked, "What's your name?" He didn't look at me. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "You can call me Thomas." Something about the way he said it made it sound borrowed. Thomas drove toward the outskirts where abandoned gas stations and broken billboards lined the road. The farther we went, the more the desert swallowed the town behind us. "I don't go past Redwood Road," I said firmly. He didn't respond. "Hey," I said, "I don't." He turned slowly toward me. His eyes were wrong. They weren't glowing or monstrous, just empty. Utterly empty. Like the eyes of someone who had forgotten how to be human. "You'll be safe," he whispered. "I chose you." I felt my heart slam inside my chest. "What do you mean you chose me?" I snapped. He smiled barely. "Because you're the only one who can see her." "See who?" Instead of answering, he pointed ahead. Up the road, standing under a flickering street light, was a woman. A woman wearing a dirty red dress. Her head tilted unnaturally to one side. Her arms hanging too long, too stiff. Her hair covering most of her face. She wasn't walking. She wasn't waiting. She was standing like she'd been placed there. I whispered, "Who is that?" Thomas whispered back, "My last passenger." The town car slowed to a crawl. My breath turned to ice. That woman, she wasn't looking at the car, but something about her posture felt like she was aware of me. Only me. Her head twitched slightly. Then her entire body jerked forward like her bones had cracked. "I don't want to go near her," I said. "Turn around." Thomas looked confused. "She's already with us." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" "She's right there." "No," he whispered, turning his dead eyes toward the rear-view mirror. "She's inside." I whipped around so fast my neck snapped. The back seat was empty. Or that's what I thought. Then I saw it in the reflection of the window behind my shoulder. A faint outline of a woman's face pressed against the glass, as if she were inches away from me. I screamed and grabbed the door handle. It was locked. "Let me out," I shouted. Thomas didn't flinch. "She wants to go home," he murmured. "She needs someone alive to take her place." My blood went cold. Someone alive to take her place. Her place where? The woman's reflection moved closer, her hair sliding like wet seaweed. Her lips stretched unnaturally wide. Thomas turned off the road onto a dirt path. The car rumbled over rocks until an old, decaying house appeared, half collapsed, windows boarded, roof sagging. Nobody lived out here. Nobody should. The car finally stopped. Before he could say anything, I unlocked the door using the manual switch and bolted out. The cold desert wind slapped my face as I stumbled backward. Thomas stepped out slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. "Alyssa," he said softly, "if you run, she'll follow you forever." I don't care, I screamed. But then I heard it. A wet dragging sound like someone pulling broken feet through sand. The woman in the red dress stepped out of the shadows of the house. Not walking, sliding, her head still tilted, her limbs bending wrong, her mouth stretching open like a torn wound. Thomas whispered behind me. She chooses the ones who can see her, and you saw her first. I ran. The desert at night is a black ocean. Every direction looks like death. I sprinted blindly, my feet sinking into the sand. Behind me, the dragging sound grew louder, faster. I didn't dare look back. Then I heard her, a whisper cutting through the wind. Alyssa. No client had ever known my full name. I had never told Thomas. That thing wasn't human. I spotted a rusted old water tower in the distance and ran toward it. I ducked behind the base, trying to quiet my breathing. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the metal creaked above me. Something was climbing the tower. I looked up. Her face stared down at me from the first ladder rung. Upside down, hair hanging, eyes white and wide. I screamed and ran again. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I ran until my lungs burned. Then headlights cut across the sand. A sheriff's patrol truck. Deputy Mark Jennings, someone who'd warned me many times to leave this life, jumped out. Alyssa, are you hurt? What happened? I tried to speak, but all I managed was, don't look at her. He grabbed my shoulders. Look at who? Behind him. She appeared, her body jerking in the headlights, her mouth opening impossibly wide, her fingers stretching like claws. Get in the truck. Jennings shouted. I didn't argue. He jumped in the driver's seat, threw the truck into gear, and slammed the gas. But the woman hit the back of the truck, so hard it shook like metal thunder. Jennings looked in the mirror. What the hell is that? Don't look at her. I screamed. Too late. He locked eyes with her in the mirror. His pupils dilated. His breathing stopped. His hands froze on the wheel. Mark, he whispered. She's beautiful. The truck swerved violently. We flipped. I woke up upside down, blood dripping into my eyes. My ears rang. The desert sky spun above me. Jennings was unconscious beside me. Then I heard footsteps, not dragging, walking, slow, steady, deliberate. Thomas. He knelt beside me like a gentle doctor. She's chosen you, he said softly. You're the one she wants. All you have to do is give her someone else. I shook my head violently. No, please. A life for a life, he whispered. One living soul in exchange for your freedom. Even a stranger will do. He held out his hand. Choose, he said, or she'll take you now. Behind him, the woman stood completely still, her head inches from mine, her mouth cracked open like broken porcelain. Her cold breath touched my cheek, and I realized if I didn't choose someone, I would become the next woman under Exit 12, just like her. I looked at Jennings, injured, unconscious, innocent. My heart broke, but survival is a monster that eats morality. I whispered, take him. Thomas smiled. The woman slid toward Jennings, her limbs snapping into place around him like a cage. He didn't even wake before she dragged him into the darkness. The next morning, I walked back to town like a ghost, covered in dust and blood, shaking, terrified. Thomas's car was gone. The woman was gone. Jennings was gone. Every night since, I hear whispers when I try to sleep. You're free for now. But sometimes when I stand on the street waiting for customers, I feel something cold behind me, watching, waiting. Because I didn't escape. I only delayed my turn. And one day, she'll want another trade. I still remember the way 2015 felt before everything went wrong, before the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling like a warning. At that point in my life, I thought I had finally done something right. I was 31, freshly married, and trying harder than I ever had to be a calm, responsible adult. My wife and I had met through a low-key dating app. Nothing flashy, just two tired people who'd both written in our bios that we preferred quiet nights and real conversations. That alone felt like fate. We dated for 3 years, took things slow, argued like normal people, learned how to apologize, and eventually decided we wanted a place that belonged to just us. Not a house, not a neighborhood, Not noise, a cabin. Somewhere far north, where cell service dropped out, and the air smelled like pine and water instead of traffic and fast food. We found it online through a private listing. No resort, no HOA, no shared docks, just a small wooden cabin near a lake called Alder Hollow. Tucked into miles of wilderness, most people never bothered to visit. Cabins were spread out far enough that you couldn't see your neighbors unless you really tried. That was the selling point. When we signed the papers, my wife laughed and said, "Finally, a place where nobody can bother us." I wish I had known how wrong that sentence would become. The first weekend we went up there was supposed to be perfect. We left early Friday morning, loaded the car with groceries, fishing gear, blankets, and a bottle of cheap red wine we always pretended tasted better than it did. The drive took just over 4 hours, most of it on highways that slowly narrowed into 2-lane roads, then 1-lane roads, then roads that felt more like suggestions than infrastructure. The deeper we went, the quieter everything got. Radio stations faded into static. Gas stations disappeared. Even the trees seemed thicker, leaning in like they were listening. My wife stared out the window and smiled. "This is exactly what I needed," she said. I nodded. Same. No emails, no neighbors, no drama. The cabin was smaller than the photo suggested, but not in a bad way. It felt honest. 1 bedroom, a bathroom, a little kitchen, and a living room with a couch that had definitely seen better decades. The front door faced the lake. The back of the cabin pressed up against trees, so dense they swallowed light by mid-afternoon. It smelled like old wood and dust, and something faintly metallic, probably the water. We spent Friday fishing, cooking over a small stove, and laughing at how terrible we were at doing nothing. That night, rain tapped gently on the roof, and for the first time in months, my shoulders relaxed. Around midnight, we turned off the lights and crawled into bed. That's when the knocking started. At first, it was soft. Just one knock, then another. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking maybe it was a branch hitting the door or the wind or my imagination filling in the gaps, now that everything was quiet. Then it happened again, harder. My wife whispered, "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," I said. "Probably nothing." The third knock was unmistakable. Someone was at the front door. I checked my phone. No service, of course. Who would even know we're here? She asked, her voice already tight. "I don't know," I said, swinging my legs off the bed. "Stay here." As soon as my feet hit the floor, the knocking turned aggressive. Not polite, not hesitant. Pounding. The kind of pounding that says, "Open up," without words. Each hit rattled the doorframe. The sound echoed through the cabin, bouncing off the walls like it had nowhere else to go. My heart started to hammer in my chest, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. Panic wouldn't help. The cabin layout mattered now. From the bedroom, you couldn't see outside. The living room windows faced the lake, but the front door sat just around the corner, out of sight unless you were standing right in front of it. The only place you could see the front area clearly was the small kitchen window. I didn't go to the door. I went low, crouched, quiet, bare feet barely touching the floor. The pounding grew heavier as I moved, like whoever was outside could sense motion. By the time I reached the kitchen window, it sounded like someone was trying to force their way in. I lifted myself just enough to look, and that's when I saw him. A large man stood with his back to the window, shoulders hunched forward as he slammed his fist into the door again and again. He was massive, easily over 6 feet, built thick, not gym thick, but working man heavy. He wore a dark jacket and a hat pulled low, hiding his face. Every hit made the door shudder. I froze. My wife stepped into the living room behind me, and I raised my hand silently, shaking my head. She stopped immediately. "What now?" she mouthed. I didn't know. There were no weapons in the cabin, no neighbors close enough to hear, no cell service, just us and whoever that was outside. I thought maybe if he knew we were awake, he'd leave. So I did something stupid. I flipped on the porch light. The sudden glow spilled over him, casting long shadows across the ground. He didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't react at all. He just kept pounding. My stomach dropped. "That's not human," my wife whispered. "No," I said quietly. "It's not." I slid down against the wall beneath the window, pulling her with me, so we were both out of sight. We sat there in silence while the door took hit after hit. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Drugs, mental illness, someone who thought this cabin was theirs. After several minutes, the pounding stopped. I waited, listened. Nothing. Relief washed over me so fast it made me dizzy. Then the sound came from the back of the cabin. Not the door or the wall. Heavy thuds slammed into the wooden siding, vibrating through the structure. Whatever he was hitting the cabin with, his fists, his shoulders, it was forceful enough to make the walls groan. My wife grabbed my arm. He's back. I didn't answer. I couldn't. We stayed low, pressed into the darkest corner of the living room, barely breathing. The shades were down, blocking any view inside. The pounding moved along the back wall, slow and deliberate, like he was testing the structure. After about 5 minutes, it stopped. Just like that. Silence returned thicker than before. We waited an hour before moving. Neither of us slept. Morning light made everything seem less threatening, but the fear hadn't left. It had just gone quiet. When we stepped outside, the evidence was there. Deep marks gouged into the front door, as if someone had slammed something hard against it repeatedly. The back wall showed scuffed wood, dented in places. Plants near the cabin were crushed flat, footprints pressed deep into the dirt. This actually happened, my wife said softly. We debated leaving. We really did. But we told ourselves it was probably someone trying to scare off newcomers. Maybe a local who didn't want outsiders. Maybe a prank that went too far. Against better judgment, we stayed. Saturday passed without incident. We fished, walked the trails, talked ourselves into believing we were safe. The woods were empty. Too empty. That night, we locked everything and went to bed early. At exactly midnight, the knocking came back. Slower this time, deliberate. Each knock spaced out like he knew we were listening. We didn't move, didn't turn on lights, didn't speak. The knocking continued for 10 minutes, then stopped. Morning brought a piece of paper on the ground. 2 words written in thick black ink. Get out. We left immediately, filed a police report. Nothing was ever found. No suspects, no explanation. We sold the cabin within months. Even now, years later, I still think about Alder Hollow and the man who knew we were there. I never thought my life would circle back to that old highway in Nevada. But trauma has a way of leaving breadcrumbs, and sometimes you follow them even when you don't want to. My name is Marika Hale, and before everything happened, I worked nights along Highway 95, right outside a dusty town called Boulder Flats, a place where tourists never stopped. Cops rarely patrolled, and the desert swallowed screams before they could travel far. I wasn't proud of the work, but I wasn't ashamed either. Life forces you into corners, and survival forces you to stay there. It was late October, wind slicing through the desert, neon motel signs flickering like dying fireflies when I first noticed the black SUV. It always parked across from the Silver Sage Motel. Engine off, windows dark, never moving even when I moved. I chalked it up to paranoia, but paranoia doesn't leave footprints. And that night it did. I had just finished a rough shift and stepped into my room at the Silver Sage, room 12. The one with peeling wallpaper and a motel Bible older than the building itself. I locked the door, threw my bag on the dresser, and checked the mirror. I looked tired, sunken eyes, smudged eyeliner, hair sticking to my lips. I sighed and reached for my face wipes. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't look in the mirror. I froze. Every part of me went cold. I stared at the message, then at the mirror. Just a cheap motel thing screwed to the wall. Nothing was there, but the phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She sees you. I didn't breathe, didn't swallow, didn't blink. I stepped back from the mirror and grabbed my pepper spray. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I checked the peephole. No one outside. When I looked back at the mirror, someone else was in it. Just a breath behind my reflection. A woman, pale face, wet hair, eyes black like oil. But when I spun around, no one was there. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it would tear through my ribs. I backed into the corner of the room, dialing the motel office. Front desk. Silver Sage. Hurry. Did someone come into my room earlier? Maintenance. Housekeeping. No, ma'am. Our staff left hours ago. Did anyone ask for room 12? A pause. Then actually someone did. A woman. But she said she was your sister. My chest tightened. I don't have a sister. Well, she left a key at the desk. She said, "You'd lock yourself out." A metallic clink echoed behind me. The spare key in my door rattled like someone had just tried unlocking it. "Sir, call the police right now." Before the man could answer, the call dropped. Static flooded my speaker. My phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Don't call for help. She hates that. A chill crawled up my spine. Then 3 sharp knocks on the door. Not frantic, not panicked, slow, heavy measured. I tiptoed to the peephole, trembling. On the other side of the door was a woman, head bowed, long wet hair covering her face, clothes dripping like she'd climbed out of a river. I whispered, "Who are you?" She lifted her head, and the peephole went pitch black. Something covered it, something breathing. The lights flickered. The air in the room turned icy, like the AC had been replaced by winter. I stumbled back, grabbing my bag, and heading straight for the bathroom. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and collapsed against the tub. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The mirror. Don't let her out. I swallowed hard. The bathroom had a mirror. I didn't want to look at it, but the more I avoided it, the more it felt like someone was staring at my back. I slowly lifted my eyes. The mirror fogged over by itself. Even though the room was cold as ice, a handprint appeared on the glass. Not mine, too thin, too long, too sharp. Then a face pressed against the inside of the mirror, like the glass was a window, and she was standing behind it. The same woman, wet, pale, unblinking. Her lips didn't move, but her voice whispered right behind my ear. "Let me in." I screamed and stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. But the mirror in the main room was worse. My reflection was gone. She was standing in its place. I ran. I didn't think, didn't pack, didn't breathe. I yanked the motel door open and sprinted into the cold night air. The black SUV I'd seen for nights was still parked there. This time the driver's window was rolled down. A man leaned out. Mid-50s, salt and pepper beard, sheriff badge glinting on his jacket. "Ma'am, you okay?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed toward my room. He followed my gaze and frowned. "Room 12. Again. Again. What do you mean again?" I gasped. He stepped closer. "You weren't told, were you?" "Told what?" Room 12 was the last place a missing woman named Leah Granger was seen. A sex worker like you. Disappeared 3 years ago. My blood froze. She was found drowned. He continued, voice low. But not in water. Her lungs were filled with sand. Before I could respond, the motel lights shut off all at once. Total darkness swallowed the building, and then screaming. Not my voice. No, it was coming from my room. The sheriff drew his gun. "Stay behind me." But as he took a step forward, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't trust him. Before I could process that, another message arrived. Unknown number. He killed her. I stared at the sheriff's back as he approached room 12. Was this real? Was someone messing with me? My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Look at his hands. I did. His fingers were stained. Dark, not dirt, not grease. Wet sand. My heartbeat thudded it against my skull. "Sheriff," I whispered shakily, "why is there sand on your hands?" He froze. He slowly turned. His eyes were hollow, emotionless. "Because she grabbed me," he said softly, "when I held her under." My stomach lurched. "She wouldn't stop screaming," he said, voice cracking. "So, I buried her where no one could hear." The wind howled. The motel sign flickered violently. He stepped toward me. "You should have never checked into room 12. He lunged. I sprinted toward the highway, gravel slicing my feet, lungs burning. The sheriff's footsteps thundered behind me. I swerved toward a row of abandoned gas pumps. He followed fast, relentless, breath ragged. I hid behind a rusted ice machine, clutching my pepper spray like it was holy. He stalked between the pumps, muttering, "She won't let me rest. She won't let me forget. You weren't supposed to see her. His shadow loomed closer. I held my breath. Then from the motel, a crash. A mirror shattered. The sheriff spun. No, not again. Something wet dragged across the pavement. He aimed his gun toward the sound. Leah, don't you come near me. But the figure that stepped into the parking lot wasn't Leah. It wore my clothes, my face, my hair, but not my eyes. They were black, empty, and she smiled at him. The sheriff backed up fast. No, stay back. Stay away from me. The thing wearing my face tilted its head. Its joints cracked unnaturally. Its movements jerky and unnatural. Then it whispered in a voice that was both mine and not mine. You buried the wrong girl. The sheriff fired. 3 shots. Each bullet passed straight through her. She didn't flinch. She stepped forward, touched his chest with one pale hand, and the sheriff dropped to his knees, screaming as sand poured out of his mouth. He clawed at his throat, eyes bulging, drowning in dry earth. Within seconds, he collapsed, silent, still dead. The creature turned to me. My legs trembled so violently I couldn't run. She walked toward me slowly, her face softening with sadness, not malice. When she stood right in front of me, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Then she dissolved like smoke in moonlight. The police came hours later, not the corrupt ones, the real ones. They found the sheriff's body, found evidence connecting him to other disappearances, found Leah's remains exactly where she'd guided them through me. They questioned me for hours, but they never found the black-eyed version of me or any signs of her. Weeks later, I left Boulder Flats for good. But sometimes when I pass a motel mirror, my reflection lags behind by a second. And at night, I still get messages from that same unknown number. Thank you. I don't block it because I know she's not trying to hurt me. She just wants to be remembered. And mirrors never forget. I still remember the exact smell of that night. Cold air mixed with damp concrete and something metallic, like old coins. It's strange what your brain chooses to hold on to when fear sinks its teeth in. Not the date, not the weather forecast, just the way your chest tightens and refuses to loosen, even months later. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily. I grew up in a pretty normal working-class American household where you learn early how to lock doors, mind your business, and not trust every smile you see. Still, I never thought I'd be the one lying awake at night, listening for footsteps that might never come. Before all of this happened, my life was boring in the best way. We lived in a small village, just outside a mid-sized town in the Midwest. One of those places where people wave from their driveways, where nothing ever makes the local Facebook page except lost cats and garage sales. The kind of place you move to because you want peace, quiet, predictability. My parents had bought the house about 2 years before everything went down. A modest 2-story place with beige siding, a narrow front porch, and a lawn my dad obsessed over like it was sacred ground. I lived there with my mom, my dad, my younger brother, and my partner. Yeah, it was crowded, but it felt safe. There was always someone home, always noise, always light. And right next door lived an old woman everyone called Mrs. Holloway, though that wasn't her real name. She'd been there longer than anyone else on the street. Thin, hunched gray hair pulled back, so tight it made her face look permanently tense. She never smiled. Ever. Not at kids. Not at dogs. Not even when my parents once gave her a ride back from town when her bus didn't show. Her house looked normal enough. Same layout as ours. Same faded siding. But something about it always felt off. Like it absorbed sound. Like it watched you back. She lived with her son. Or so we thought. We weren't close neighbors. We did the polite nods, the quick, "Hey, how's it going?" as we passed each other. That was it. My family is friendly, but we mind our own business around here. That's just how things work. Sometimes, though, we'd hear shouting from next door. It wasn't constant. Maybe once every few weeks, a man's voice raised and angry, muffled through walls and distance. We always brushed it off. Probably yelling at a game, my dad would say. Or one of those gaming headsets, my brother added once. We didn't think much of it. God, I wish we had. The night it happened started like any other. A regular weekday. Work, dinner, a little TV, phones in hand until our eyes burned. Around midnight, everyone started drifting off to their rooms. I double-checked the locks like I always do. Front door, back door, deadbolt chain. Some people call it paranoid. I call it being alive. I had just crawled into bed when the house exploded with noise. Bang, bang, bang. Not knocking, not ringing the bell. Pounding. The kind that rattles the door frame and sends your heart straight into your throat. Our Jack Russell, Milo, lost his mind, instantly barking, snarling, throwing himself toward the stairs like he was ready to take on a bear. "What the hell?" my mom shouted from her room. I sat straight up, frozen. My phone said 2:31 a.m. Nobody knocks at that hour for anything good. Another bang hit the door harder this time. "Dad," I yelled. I heard my parents' bedroom door fly open, footsteps pounding down the hall. My dad didn't hesitate. That scared me more than the knocking. "I'm going down," he said sharply. "Don't open it," my mom whispered, panic thick in her voice. "I'll just see who it is." I followed him to the top of the stairs, my legs shaking so badly I had to grip the railing. "Dad, wait," I said. "What if he has a weapon?" He didn't answer. The knocking stopped as he reached the door. For a split second, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Then my dad opened it. I didn't see the man clearly from where I stood, but I heard his voice. Deep, rough, slurred. "Mate, what's your problem?" The man snapped. My dad didn't even get a chance to speak. "What's your problem?" The man shot back, aggressive, stepping closer. Something in my dad must have clicked. Instinct survival. He slammed the door shut, so hard the whole house shook and immediately locked it. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. The pounding started again, faster, angrier. "Open the door, damn it," the man yelled. My mom grabbed her phone. My brother peeked down the stairs, pale as a ghost. I ran to my bedroom window and pulled the curtain back, just enough to see. Under the street light, I saw him. Tall, broad shoulders, messy hair, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. He was pacing now, shouting things I couldn't make out. Then he turned and walked straight next door. I watched as he banged on Mrs. Holloway's door, yelling, swearing. A light flicked on inside. "If you don't stop, I'm calling the police." Someone shouted from inside her house. The man cursed once more, then disappeared into the darkness behind the house. None of us slept after that. Every creak, every passing car, every gust of wind made my stomach drop. My partner slept through almost everything, only waking when I stepped on him, trying to get a better view out the window. "What the hell?" he mumbled. "Someone tried to break in," I whispered. His face changed instantly. The next morning felt unreal, like the world had moved on without us. Birds chirping, people going to work, kids waiting for the bus. 2 days later, my partner and I were driving to work when police cars screamed past us, lights flashing. My gut sank. I texted my brother. "Everything okay?" No reply. By the time I reached work, my phone buzzed. It was my dad. They took him out in cuffs. The message read, "On a stretcher." Turns out Mrs. Holloway didn't have one son. She had two. The man who came pounding on our door lived right next to us the entire time. Apparently, he'd had some kind of breakdown. Drugs, mental illness. Nobody knew for sure. The police took him away, and for a brief moment, I felt relief. 2 days later, he was back. That's when I bought the Ring doorbell. Weeks passed. No incidents. Then my mom talked to another neighbor, a woman who'd lived here longer than us. "Oh yeah," she said casually. "That's her son. He used to do that all the time." "The lady before you?" "Same thing." My mom came home furious. We never got an apology. Never an explanation. And even now, months later, I still wake up some nights, heart racing, convinced. I hear pounding on the door. Because the scariest part, it wasn't a monster. It was a man. And he lived right next door. I didn't move out because I wanted freedom. I moved out because staying felt worse. At 29, freshly done with grad school, I was still sleeping in my childhood bedroom with posters I never bothered to take down. My parents never said I had to leave, but I could feel it in the way my mom paused before asking where I was going. or how my dad stopped pretending he didn't notice my late nights. They helped me buy my first house. Money they'd been saving since I was in high school. I hated how grateful and guilty I felt at the same time. The house wasn't impressive. One floor, narrow hallway, old cabinets, the kind of place a single person buys when the economy is trash and dreams are expensive. It sat on a quiet street outside a mid-sized American town plowed in winter. Dead silent after dark. I told myself silence meant safety. I worked a normal job during the day, professional, clean. Something my parents could proudly explain to relatives. What they didn't know and never would was how I really made my money. Sex work wasn't some dramatic decision. It was math. Rent plus loans minus salary equals desperation. I didn't work the streets. I screened clients. Met in hotels or private apartments. Set rules. No names. No attachments. In and out. I kept my world separate. At least I thought I did. The first few weeks alone were rough. I slept light. Every sound made me sit up. But slowly the house started to feel like mine. I stocked the fridge, left laundry unfolded, walked around barefoot at night. That's when the food started disappearing. It was small at first. Milk gone quicker than usual. Leftovers missing. A pizza box lighter than it should have been. I blamed myself. I eat like a damn linebacker, I muttered one night, tossing the box. But deep down, something felt wrong. One evening, standing in my kitchen with the fridge door open, I whispered, "No way." I remembered the hidden cameras I'd bought years ago. Cheap things disguised as phone chargers. No real reason why I still had them. Maybe paranoia runs in the family. I plugged one in above the counter just to be safe. Days passed. I forgot about it until a coworker mentioned her mom's house getting robbed. That night, I sat on my bed, heart pounding, scrolling through footage. Nothing. Nothing. Then movement. At 2:14 a.m., my upper cabinet opened. A woman climbed out. She looked 50-some, thin, hair greasy, and tied back. Her eyes scanned the room, like she knew it better than I did. She drank my milk, ate my food, then crawled back inside the cabinet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked outside and called the police. When they pulled her out, she screamed like an animal. "That's my daughter," she yelled. "This is my house." They took her away. I pressed charges. After that, I thought the nightmare was over. I was wrong. The paranoia stuck. I installed cameras everywhere. Slept with lights on. My mom stayed over for a while. Eventually, things calmed down. Life went back to normal until my work started bleeding into my home. One client, older guy, well-spoken, heavy accent, started pushing boundaries. "I like places that feel lived in," he said once. "Feels real." "No," I replied. My voice was flat, firm. He smiled like he understood. A week later, I came home and felt it immediately. The air was wrong. My bedroom door was cracked. I froze. "Hello." My voice shook. Nothing. Then I saw it. My nightstand drawer was open. Inside my work phone. Exactly where I left it, but turned on. Someone had been there. I checked the cameras. At 1:52 a.m., the front door unlocked. The man walked in like he owned the place. He didn't rush, didn't steal. He wandered, touched things, sat on my bed. Then he leaned close to the camera and whispered, "I knew this was your real life." I threw up. The police came again. Statements, reports, no forced entry. I knew what that meant. Someone had copied my key. I didn't sleep that night or the next. I jumped at every sound, every passing car. I carried pepper spray in my house, like it was a comfort blanket. Then one night while lying awake, I heard it. A soft sound from the kitchen. Tap, 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 slow, intentional. I grabbed my phone, shaking, and whispered, "I'm calling the police." The tapping stopped. Then a voice low, calm. "I just want to talk." I screamed. Sirens came fast. They found him hiding behind my fridge. The same man smiling. They took him away in cuffs. This time he didn't fight. He just looked at me and said, "You shouldn't mix your worlds." I sold the house 3 months later. Moved somewhere loud, busy, bright. I quit sex work, took longer shifts, smaller apartment, more neighbors. Some nights when I wake up thirsty, I still hesitate before opening the fridge. Still listen. Still remember how close safety really is to illusion. After the second arrest, the house stopped feeling like shelter. It felt like a trap. The police left around 4 in the morning. Their boots tracked snow and dirt across my floor, and I didn't even care. One of them, a young guy, tired eyes, paused near the door and said, "You might want to stay somewhere else for a bit." I nodded like that idea hadn't already been screaming in my head. As soon as the door shut, the silence rushed back in, heavy, thick, like the walls were holding their breath. I locked every door, then checked them again. Then again, I sat on my couch wrapped in a blanket, lights blazing, TV on mute just for the noise. My phone buzzed nonstop. From my mom, my boss. A couple clients I ignored completely. Around sunrise, I finally called my mom. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "I'm getting dressed." When she arrived, she hugged me so tight it hurt. "You're shaking," she whispered. "I don't feel safe here anymore," I said, my voice cracking. She looked around the house, her eyes lingering on the cabinets, the hallway, the bedroom door. "We'll figure something out," she said. "You're not alone." But I felt alone. I felt violated in a way I didn't have words for. The next few weeks blurred together. I stayed with my parents, driving back to the house during the day to grab clothes, mail, essentials. I couldn't be there after dark. Even in daylight, the place felt watched. I replayed the footage over and over. The woman in the cabinet, the man on my bed, different people, same entitlement, like my space didn't belong to me at all. I met with a detective assigned to my case, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a blunt way of talking. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said, flipping through her notes. "But you must understand something." I looked up. "People like this," she continued, "they don't see boundaries the way normal folks do, especially when they think they know you." I swallowed. "He found me through work." She nodded slowly. "That happens." I hated how calm she sounded. "Should I be scared?" I asked. She met my eyes. "You should be careful." That answer stuck with me. I changed my number, deleted accounts, cut off clients without explanation. The money loss hurt, but not as much as the thought of another stranger learning my habits, my routines, my address. Still, the fear didn't leave. At night at my parents' house, I'd wake up convinced I heard footsteps. I'd check locks that were already locked. I'd jump when my dad coughed down the hall. One night, my mom sat beside me on the couch while we watched some dumb reality show. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she said quietly. I laughed weakly. "I don't even know how to not be." She squeezed my hand. A month later, I went back to the house alone. I needed closure or control. Or maybe I just needed to prove to myself I could still walk through the door without breaking. The place smelled stale. I walked room to room, touching walls, opening drawers, grounding myself. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Then I opened the cabinet. Empty. Just a hollow space that made my stomach turn. "I'm done," I said out loud. I listed the house the next week. Packing was brutal. Every item felt contaminated. I threw away more than I kept. Mattresses, bedding, clothes. The day the house sold, I felt relief instead of sadness. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Loud street, constant traffic, neighbors on every side. People above me, below me, around me. Noise became comfort. I adopted a dog not because I wanted one, but because I needed something alive that would alert me if something was wrong. He was old, grumpy, missing half his teeth. Perfect. The first night in the apartment, I slept 8 hours straight. No dreams, no panic, just sleep. I quit sex work for good. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was tired of letting strangers feel entitled to me. I found a second job. Picked up extra shifts. Life got smaller, tighter, safer. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that cabinet, about how close someone can be without you knowing. How safety isn't about locks or walls. It's about who knows where you exist. I learned that independence isn't just about living alone. It's about protecting your space, your boundaries, your life. And I'll never forget how easily all of that can be taken. I always thought paranoia was something people joked about until the night it saved my life. I live alone in a small studio apartment on the outskirts of Briar Hollow, Oregon. One of those quiet towns where nothing ever happens and everyone pretends that's a good thing. Tree-lined streets, dim yellow street lights, neighbors who wave but don't really talk. The kind of place where you feel safe because you're supposed to. I'd lived there for almost 5 years. Nothing bad had ever happened. That's what made what had happened so much worse. I work remotely for a logistics company based in Seattle, which means most of my days blur together. Emails, spreadsheets, coffee reheated 3 times. My cat curled up on the windowsill watching birds like it's her full-time job. Her name is Juniper, a chunky gray tabby with half a torn ear and the attitude of someone who survived the streets and knows it. Juniper doesn't trust anyone. That matters later. My apartment was on the 2nd floor above a closed real estate office. The front entrance had one of those old metal security doors that slammed shut if you didn't hold it, and a narrow staircase that echoed every footstep. There were cameras outside, motion lights, and a keypad door downstairs that required a code after 10 p.m. It felt secure, too secure. That night was in January, dead winter, the kind of cold that crawls into your bones and refuses to leave. The sky was already dark by 5, and the wind howled through the trees like it was angry about something personal. I finished dinner late, fed Juniper, and did my usual bedtime routine. Locked the door. Check it again. One more time just to be sure. I remember standing there with my hand on the dead bolt, thinking about some stupid article I'd read weeks earlier. Something about how leaving the key inside the lock could make it easier for burglars to break in. So I didn't insert the key. I just locked it. That decision would haunt me for months. By the time I crawled into bed, it was around 1:30 a.m. I put in my earplugs, silicone ones, bright orange, impossible to miss because the building made weird noises at night, and my brain loved turning them into horror movies. Juniper hopped onto the bed, circled twice, and curled up near my feet. I fell asleep almost instantly. I woke up to the feeling that I wasn't alone. You know that feeling. The one that doesn't come from sound or touch. Just a sudden awareness that something is wrong. My eyes opened and I screamed. There were 2 people standing next to my bed. A man and a woman. Strangers. I scrambled backward, heart slamming so hard it hurt. My scream echoing off the walls as I grabbed the nearest thing I could reach, a lamp. Maybe. I don't even remember. Whoa. Hey. The man said, hands up. We're not here to hurt you. The woman looked just as terrified as I felt. Oh my God, she said. I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to scare you. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could manage was, how did you get in here? My voice sounded thin, broken. The woman swallowed. I was coming home from work. I live upstairs. I saw your cat on the stairwell. My stomach dropped. Juniper? She was just sitting there. The woman continued, her voice shaking now. Right outside your door. And your door was open. Just a crack. The man nodded. We knocked. We called out. No answer. I looked around wildly. My laptop was still on the desk. My purse was untouched. Nothing was broken. Nothing was missing. But it was locked, I whispered. I locked it. We didn't touch anything, the woman said quickly. I swear. I was too scared to come in alone. I went to get my husband. I slid off the bed, legs shaking, and ran to the door. It was closed, unlocked, no damage, no forced entry, just open. The police arrived within 15 minutes. 2 officers, calm, professional, bored. They checked the door, the windows, the balcony. The balcony faced the parking lot, 2 stories up with no fire escape, no ladder, nothing to climb. It's unlikely someone accessed it from outside. One of them said, writing something down. So how did they get in? I asked. He exchanged a look with his partner. Have you ever sleepwalked? No, I said immediately. Never. Sometimes people don't realize they do. I didn't open the door, I said. I know I didn't. They shrugged gently, the way people do when they've already decided what they believe. Stress can cause things like this. The other officer said, Memory gaps, especially if you sleep with earplugs. I showed them where my keys were, exactly where I always put them, untouched. They left without filing a report. I didn't sleep at all that night. Juniper stayed pressed against my chest, eyes wide, ears flicking at every sound. The next morning, I called my landlord. Graham Wilkes, mid-50s, soft voice. Always sounded like he was chewing something, even when he wasn't. "You should have called maintenance," he said. "But I'll have someone check the door." When his wife, Lorna, stopped by later that day, her reaction shattered something inside me. She wasn't concerned. She wasn't surprised. She laughed. "Oh yeah," she said casually. "That door's got a mind of its own." I stared at her. "What?" "It sticks sometimes," she said. "And then other times it just pops. Pressure change, I guess." "That's not funny," I said. My voice cracked. "Someone could have come in." She waved it off. "It's happened before." My stomach twisted. "You didn't think to mention that?" "Well, it doesn't happen often." Then she told me the story. Years ago, when they lived in that unit temporarily, she was reading on the couch when a neighbor's dog wandered straight into the apartment. The door was closed, she said. Next thing I know, boom, dog in my living room. I felt sick. Maintenance came. They tested the door. "Seems fine," they said. They didn't change the locks. I started sleeping with a chair wedged under the handle. I started locking the key inside the deadbolt. I started checking the door every hour. Juniper never sat by the door again. She avoided it completely. Animals know things we don't. I moved out 6 months later. I still don't know what really happened. Was it faulty hardware, pressure, human error, or something else? All I know is this. You never realize how fragile safety is until it disappears. And once it does, you never get it back the same way again. I remember exactly how that summer started because at the time it felt like the first real step into adulthood. I was 21, halfway through college, and broke in the very specific way. Only a college student can be too proud to ask for help, too optimistic to think anything bad would happen, and just desperate enough to say yes to an internship nobody else wanted. The company was called Hollow Ridge Utilities, and their field office sat miles outside a dying Midwestern town named Briar Hollow. If you blinked while driving through, you'd miss it. A couple of rusted signs, an old grain elevator, one gas station that closed before midnight, and then nothing but long, empty roads slicing through woods and farmland. I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a closed hardware store for the summer. The place smelled faintly like old paint and dust, and the floor creaked like it was constantly complaining, but it was cheap. That was all that mattered. The internship paid decently, but the hours were brutal. Because of maintenance schedules and equipment testing, I often worked late, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning. At first, it felt kind of cool, like I was part of some secret night world that normal people never saw. That feeling didn't last long. By mid-July, exhaustion had settled into my bones. That night, the one that still crawls back into my head when I'm driving alone after dark, had been brutally quiet at work. No music, no chatter, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional clank of metal from somewhere deeper in the facility. When I finally clocked out, my phone read 3:07 a.m. Thank God. I muttered to myself, grabbing my keys. The parking lot was empty except for my car, an old silver sedan that had seen better decades. The clear coat was peeling. The radio only worked when it felt like it, and the engine had a habit of making noises I pretended not to hear. But it was mine, and it got me from point A to point B, usually. The drive back to my apartment took about 20 minutes. One long county road, a few gentle curves, and absolutely nothing around except trees, ditches, and fields that disappeared into darkness. No street lights, no houses, just asphalt and shadows. I rolled my window down a crack, letting the warm summer air hit my face. The night smelled like cut grass and damp earth. Crickets screamed from somewhere out in the woods, so loud they almost drowned out the sound of my engine. My mind wandered the way it always did on those drives. I thought about how tired I was, how I still had 3 weeks left of the internship, how my mom kept texting to make sure I was being safe. I even caught myself thinking about Lena, A girl I'd gone on 2 dates with earlier that week from a dating app. She lived back near campus, and we joked about how weird my summer job sounded. Serial killer vibes. She'd laughed. At the time, I'd laughed too. About 10 minutes into the drive, the first sputter hit. It was subtle, just a quick hiccup in the engine, like the car had cleared its throat. "Don't do this," I said, tapping the steering wheel. A few seconds later, it happened again. Louder this time. The dashboard lights flickered, dimmed, then steadied. My stomach tightened. Come on. Just get me home," I whispered. The road ahead stretched empty and black. No headlights, no tail lights. Nothing. Then the engine coughed hard, lost power, and the steering wheel went stiff in my hands. No, I muttered, pumping the gas pedal out of pure panic. The car slowed, rolling helplessly until I guided it onto the narrow gravel shoulder. With one final shudder, the engine died completely. The sudden silence was deafening. I sat there for a moment, hand still on the wheel, heart thudding. The only sound was the ticking of the engine cooling down and the relentless noise of insects in the trees. I tried the ignition. Click, click. Nothing. Great. I sighed, leaning back. I checked the gas gauge. Half a tank. So not that. I popped the hood, stepped out, and immediately felt how alone I was. The moon was high and bright, washing the road and the surrounding woods in pale silver light. The trees stood thick on both sides, their shadows stretching like fingers toward the road. I stared at the engine like it might explain itself. "I have no idea what I'm looking at," I admitted to no one. After about 30 seconds of pretending I could fix it, I shut the hood and got back inside, locking the doors out of habit. I called roadside assistance, gave them my location as best I could. "Looks like you're pretty far out," the operator said. "It'll be about 30 minutes, maybe an hour." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Figures." I hung up and tried to distract myself. I put in my headphones, pulled up YouTube, and leaned my seat back slightly. The glow of my phone felt like a tiny shield against the darkness outside. I don't know how long passed, 15 minutes, 20. Then I heard it, a soft, deliberate clunk right behind me. My eyes snapped open. Another sound followed, a faint rattle, the unmistakable noise of a door handle being tested. My heart slammed into my throat. I yanked my headphones out and twisted around in my seat, expecting to see a tow truck, maybe a flashlight beam, something normal. There was nothing. The road behind me was empty. No headlights, no engine noise, just darkness. "Hello," I called, my voice cracking. No answer. I sat there, frozen, listening. The crickets seemed to have gone quiet, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. I scanned the tree line, my eyes adjusting to the moonlight. That's when I saw movement. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer, but then I noticed the shape was wrong. Too upright, too still. About 30 feet into the woods, just beyond the ditch, a man was kneeling at the base of a large tree. He wore a dark green jacket and jeans, both smeared with dirt. His hair looked brown, matted, and his beard was thick and unkempt. He was digging, actually digging with his bare hands, clawing at the soil like he was trying to pull something out of the ground. I couldn't breathe. "What the hell?" I whispered. The moonlight caught his movements in sharp detail. His shoulders rose and fell as he worked, completely focused, like I wasn't even there. Dirt piled up beside him. Every so often, he'd stop, tilt his head slightly, and listen. I slowly sank lower in my seat, my pulse roaring in my ears. My mind raced through 1,000 terrifying questions. Did he try my door? How long had he been there? Was he alone? The minutes stretched unbearably long. He kept digging. Never once did he speak. I felt tears sting my eyes. Not from panic exactly, but from the sheer wrongness of the moment. This wasn't some movie scene. This was real. I was stranded, alone, and someone was out there doing something I didn't understand. Then, finally, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. Relief flooded through me, so hard I almost laughed. A truck pulled up behind me, hazard lights flashing. As soon as the light hit the woods, the man stopped digging slowly, unnaturally. He turned his head toward the road. I ducked instinctively, then forced myself to look again. He didn't run. He lowered himself to all fours and moved deeper into the trees, crawling with a smooth, practiced motion that made my skin crawl. The tow truck driver stepped out, cheerful and oblivious. "Rough night, huh?" he said. "You have no idea," I replied, my voice shaking as he hooked up my car. I kept staring at the tree line, half expecting to see that man's eyes staring back at me. They never did. I rode home in silence, gripping my phone, replaying the image over and over in my head. I never drove that road at night again. I sold that car a month later. And sometimes when I think about that summer, I wonder what he was digging for or if he ever found it. I was 19 when I downloaded the dating app. Not because I was lonely exactly, but because summer had a way of stretching time until the hours felt hollow, like an empty house after everyone's gone to bed. I had just finished my second year of college and moved back in with my mom and my younger sister for the break. We'd recently bought a modest house on the edge of a quiet suburb outside Riverside. Not the kind of place people write stories about. Beige siding, narrow driveway. One of those neighborhoods where everyone waved, but nobody really talked. It felt safe. Too safe, maybe. My mom worked long shifts at a medical billing office, sometimes late into the night, and my sister Belle was 15 and always bouncing between friends' houses. That left me alone a lot. So, one humid July night, sprawled across my bed with the ceiling fan rattling above me, I created a profile. Nothing fancy, just a few photos, a line about liking live music and late-night drives, and a joke about being terrible at bowling. That's how I matched with Jonah. His profile didn't scream red flags. He had a crooked smile, a picture of him leaning against an old pickup, another with a dog that wasn't his. He admitted that in the bio, which I weirdly appreciated. He lived about 20 minutes away, worked construction during the day, and claimed he was bad at texting, but good in person. We started chatting casually, the kind of conversations that drifted from favorite fast food to childhood stories. He typed the way people around here talked, short, relaxed, tossing in ain't, and kinda like punctuation. It felt familiar, comfortable. After a week, he asked if I wanted to meet up. Nothing big, just coffee. My mom raised an eyebrow when I told her. "Public place," she said, not even looking up from her laptop. "And text me when you get there." "I know," I said, rolling my eyes, but smiling anyway. We met at a local coffee shop off the highway. One of those places with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that always smelled like burnt espresso. Jonah was already there when I walked in, sitting near the window. He stood up when he saw me, which felt oddly old-fashioned. "You're taller than I thought," he said, grinning. "You're worse at smiling in pictures," I shot back. He laughed real and easy, and for the first half hour, everything felt normal. We talked about school, his job sites, the heat, how summer out here felt like it pressed down on your chest. He didn't stare too long, didn't interrupt, didn't say anything weird, but there were little things. When the barista called my name, Jonah tilted his head like he was listening to something else. "You hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Thought I did." I brushed it off. Everyone zones out sometimes. We ended up staying longer than planned. When we finally walked out into the parking lot, the sun was already starting to sink, turning everything orange and hazy. "So," he said, rocking back on his heels, "you want to do this again?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. Over the next few weeks, we saw each other more. Movies, drives with the windows down, sitting in his truck, eating fries, and listening to the radio crackle between stations. He never came to my house, though. Whenever I suggested it, he dodged the idea. "Your place is probably too boring," he'd say. Or another time. One night, after my sister had gone to sleep and my mom was working late, I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard music. Soft, faint. At first, I thought it was coming from my phone. Maybe an ad or a video I hadn't closed. But when I muted everything, it kept playing. A slow, delicate melody. It took me a few seconds to recognize it. Silent Night. My stomach tightened. We didn't own anything that played music like that. We didn't celebrate Christmas. And the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside my room. I sat up listening. The music was clearer now, drifting from my closet. Okay, I whispered to myself, forcing a laugh. Get it together. I slid off the bed and crossed the room, every step feeling louder than it should have. When I opened the closet door, the music grew sharper, echoing softly against the walls. I pushed aside jackets, hoodies, clothes I barely wore anymore. After a minute of searching, my fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. I pulled it out. It was an egg-shaped ornament, porcelain, maybe decorated with gold vines and tiny painted flowers. There was a seam around the middle, and when I shifted it in my hands, the music continued, delicate and unsettling. I've never seen you before, I said out loud. The jacket it had been inside was new. I'd bought it myself a week earlier. After about a minute, the music slowed and stopped. Just died. I FaceTimed my sister immediately. Bree, have you ever seen this? I asked, flipping the camera. She squinted at the screen. No. That's super creepy. Did Mom buy that? I don't think so. Call her, she said. And don't touch it. My mom didn't answer. When she got home later, I met her at the door, holding the ornament like it might bite me. What is this? I asked. She frowned. Where did you get that? It was in my closet. Her face changed then. Not scared. Exactly. More uneasy. I've never seen that before, she said slowly. We called the police. They checked the house, took the ornament with them, said they'd inspect it. No cameras, no trackers, nothing. 2 weeks later, my mom called me while I was staying over at a friend's dorm. Why did you leave the attic door open? She asked. I didn't, I said. Well, someone did. After that, she banned us from going up there. Things with Jonah started to feel off. He'd ask questions about my house. Too many. Does it creak at night? You got an attic, right? Ever hear stuff when you're alone? One night, I asked him directly, why do you care so much? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I just noticed things, he said. I stopped seeing him soon after. Years later, at 31, living alone in a rural part of the Midwest in a house built long before I was born, I found myself thinking about him again, about the ornament, about the attic. And when a man on a dating app asked me casually if my house had an attic, I unmatched him without a word. Some things don't need answers. I never thought the quiet nights on Harbor Street would follow me for the rest of my life. I never thought one client, just one, would change the way I look at an empty hallway or a dark window or a motel sign flickering in the distance. My name is Alyssa Grant. I'm 27 years old, born in Jacksonville, Florida, raised mostly by myself, and I've been working the streets of Wilmington, North Carolina, long enough to understand danger before it announces itself. But the night I met the woman in room 6, there was no warning, no sound, just a presence I still feel breathing behind me when I close my eyes. It happened at the Sandridge Motor Inn, a peeling, forgotten motel sitting right off Highway 17. If you've ever driven past it, you wouldn't remember. Just a broken sign with half the bulbs dead, a vending machine that never works, and a front desk clerk who always looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. The Sandridge was cheap, and cheap places attract men who don't want to be seen. But that night wasn't about a man. The air smelled like rain. The neon sign flickered against puddles on the pavement. As I stood under the awning, scrolling my phone, waiting for my next client to confirm the room, the messages came suddenly, 5 in a row, from an unknown number. Room 6. Come alone. Cash is on the table. Nothing else, no name, no details. Most people think sex work is reckless, that we walk blindly into rooms without thinking. But we think more than anyone. Every decision feels like it could be your last. But the motel manager had cameras. The parking lot wasn't empty. And I needed the money. Rent was late. My car payment was late. Everything was late. So I walked to room 6. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, calling softly. It's Alyssa. You texted me. Still nothing. But when my hand touched the knob, it turned by itself, slowly, like someone was opening it from inside. The door creaked open. The room was almost completely dark, except for the dim yellow lamp on the nightstand. Its shade was tilted like someone had bumped it earlier. The air felt cold, not AC cold, grave cold. I stepped inside and the door closed behind me without me touching it. "Hello," I whispered. That was when I noticed the woman sitting on the edge of the bed. Her long black hair hung over her face. Her hands were folded in her lap, like she'd been waiting for hours. Something about her posture was wrong. Too still. Too straight, like she wasn't breathing. She wore a pale blue dress that looked old, dated, like something from the early 2000s. "Are you the one who booked me?" I asked. No answer. I reached for the light switch. No lights. Her voice was low, raspy, and came out so suddenly that my fingers froze midair. "Sit," she whispered. I swallowed. "Okay. Do you want to talk about what you're looking for?" "Sit," she whispered. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to leave. But desperation pushes you past your instincts. It blinds you just enough. So, I sat in the chair across from her. That's when she finally lifted her head, and I realized something was wrong with her eyes. They weren't focused on me. They weren't focused on anything. They were wide, glassy, reflecting the lamp like mirrors, dead eyes, but somehow still watching me. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She didn't blink, didn't move. Her hand lifted shakily, pointing to the nightstand. There was a stack of cash folded neatly beside the lamp. "Take it," she said. I reached slowly, my fingers brushing the money. Then she said something that froze every muscle in my body. "Don't leave me alone." I sat back down. "Are you in trouble?" I asked. She nodded slowly. Then she whispered, "He comes back at night." "Who?" "He owned me," she said. "Just like he owns this room." Her voice trembled now. "No matter how many times I leave, I wake up here again." I frowned. "You mean he trafficked you?" Her lips twitched. "Something like that." The lamp flickered. The air turned colder. She lowered her head again, hair hiding her face. "Don't leave me alone," she repeated. "He doesn't like when someone leaves." My throat tightened. "Do you need me to call someone?" "The police." Her body stiffened instantly. "No police." Her voice wasn't trembling anymore. It was sharp, final. "No one can help. Not anymore." The lamp flickered again. Outside, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Heavy, slow. She grabbed my wrist. Suddenly, her grip ice cold, and whispered, "He's here." The footsteps stopped outside our door. Then tap, tap, tap. Knuckles rapped slowly against the wood. My heart pounded, so hard I could hear it in my ears. The woman leaned forward, whispering fast. Desperate. "Don't open it. Don't answer. Don't look at the peephole." The knocking grew harder. Tap, tap, tap. "Alyssa." The voice outside dragged out my name like it was tasting it. "How long will you hide from me?" My blood turned cold. How did he know my name? I hadn't said it. I hadn't called out. I hadn't even texted him. The woman gripped my hand tighter. "Don't move." She breathed. "He wants you to open the door. If you do, he'll take you too." "Who is he?" I whispered. "My last client," she said. She lifted her head slowly, and for the first time, I saw the bruises around her throat, the finger-shaped marks, the purple rotting skin like she'd been strangled for days. My breath caught. "Are you?" I could barely say it. "Are you alive?" Her eyes lifted. "Glacier. Emptier. I haven't been alive since 2011, she whispered. The knocking stopped. The hallway fell silent, but she kept gripping my arm, her cold fingers burning into my skin. "I was killed in this room," she said. "He kept me here for days. No one came. No one heard." My stomach twisted. "Then what am I doing here?" I asked. She looked toward the door. "You were called." "By who?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "By him. He always brings someone back when the room gets lonely." The doorknob started turning very slowly. Metal creaked. The lock slid. The door opened an inch on its own. I froze. A shadow spilled across the carpet, stretching toward me. Not shaped like a man. Too tall, too thin, its arms dragging along the floor like smoke. The woman shoved me hard. "Run. Now run." I grabbed my bag and bolted toward the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. The lights flickered violently, buzzing like angry bees. Something hit the outer door. A heavy thud, then another, then another. The woman screamed, this horrible, desperate sound that cut through the walls. I pressed myself against the cold tile. The pounding stopped. Her scream stopped. Silence. Then the softest whisper drifted through the bathroom door. Alyssa, open the door. It was her voice, but wrong, low, stretched, mocking. I covered my mouth, tears burning my eyes. The handle twisted. Slowly, I braced myself. The door swung open, but no one was there. The woman, the shadow gone. The main door to the room was wide open, the hallway empty. I ran, barefoot, breathless, terrified, down the stairs, across the parking lot, through the rain, until I reached the street. I didn't stop running until I reached a 24-hour gas station, collapsing near the entrance, while the clerk stared at me like I'd escaped a crime scene. I never went back for my things, not for the makeup bag, not for the jacket, not even for the cash. 2 days later, the police sealed the Sandridge Motor Inn. They said room 6 had been abandoned for years. No guests, no bookings, no working locks. But the part that made me stop breathing was this. The officer told me they found traces of blood under the floorboards belonging to a woman named Rachel Moore, a sex worker missing since 2011. Her case was never solved. But they did have one clue, a motel employee's testimony. Back then, Rachel had been last seen getting a room key from a tall man with a scar across his jaw. The same employee said the man used to whisper the same phrase whenever he booked a room. I'll come back at night. It's been 3 weeks. I moved apartments, changed my number, stopped taking clients from unknown sources. But last night at 2:17 a.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number, one message, just one. Room 6. And then a second message. You left too soon. My phone still sits on the table behind me. Screen glowing every few minutes, with another notification I refuse to open. Outside, I swear I heard footsteps in my hallway just now. Heavy, slow, deliberate, like someone is walking toward my door right now. And someone just whispered from the other side, Alyssa, don't leave me alone.